welcome to Creepy Cave-Dwelling Cryptids. Within the world of cryptids lies a realm of the unknown, and in many ways an introspection into our own deepest, darkest fears. These creatures take on varying appearances that range from the mundane to some that are purely nightmare fuel. Their habitats vary greatly as well, and to date, for the most part, I have just about made a video for at least one of each of the biomes that exist. However, there is one such home that I have very rarely touched on, and that is the topic of today's video: cave-dwelling cryptids. Being in a dark, reportedly haunted house is scary enough, but the idea of traipsing in a dark cavern deep within the earth is even more unnerving. So let's look at a handful of these creatures, and I know at least one of them will make you never look at a cave the same way again. Hang Sun Doong Cave. We are starting off our list with a creature that historically is said to roam about the caves that are located in Quang Binh province of Vietnam. The Hang Sun Doong Cave roughly translates to mean Cave of the Mountain River or Mountain Cave, and it is said to be the largest passage in the world. Its existence wasn't discovered until 1991 by a man named Ho Kang, and officially the cave was opened to the public in 2013. Throughout the years, many explorers and visitors alike claimed to catch a glimpse of reptilian-looking humans peering out from the darkness. In at least one instance, a visitor's disappearance was claimed to be the result of those creatures. Historically, reports of snake-like creatures have been said to live in that area, but not much thought was given to their validity. Apparently, the same man who discovered the caves came forward claiming that he too saw these elusive creatures in one of his treks into the cave. He stated that the beings appeared to have a human body but the head of a snake, and he simply called them devil creatures. During that venture, he managed to take a couple of photos, but all resulted in nothing except for one. Here is the image that claims to show one of the elusive creatures. Some have come forward and stated that they feel it shows the pareidolia effect, where our mind creates familiar images out of an unfamiliar thing, such as a cloud looking like a human's face. However, the legends of the area do support such creatures existing in the caves, not to mention that many people do believe that there is a reptilian race of people living on the earth that make their home underground. So who knows? Alashao Ahul. While most of the cryptids on our list follow the pattern of being described as something that doesn't fit with anything else known in nature, these two do. The Alashao and Ahul are too similar in description to rightfully separate them, so I am including them together. Basically, these two cryptids are giant-sized, man-eating bats. For full clarity, the Ahul is sometimes described as being ape-like, and in some cases even looking like a pterodactyl. However, there are multiple reports of this bat form. Both are said to stand around 5 to 6 feet tall and have a wingspan of 12 feet wide. Their skin is black and their wings are of a reddish-brown color. They both have very sharp teeth and hunt their prey at night. The Alashao is said to live in southern Cameroon and West Africa, although there are reported sightings in Zimbabwe and Zambia. Cryptozoologist Ivan T. Sanderson was exploring a cave in the Asumbo Mountains of Cameroon in 1932, looking for the hammerhead fruit bat, when he encountered something entirely different. In his claims, he said the giant bat flew down on him and started to attack, but he managed to get away. When Ivan returned to the village, he was told that what he had encountered was the Alashao, and that it was best to stay inside as the creature would surely be out looking for its escaped meal. Interestingly, the local Apolo people do have carved masks that they wear in ceremonies that look very similar to this creature, and they are viewed as demons. Naturalist Dr. Ernest Bartels first described Ahul in 1925 while in the jungles of Kava in Indonesia. While exploring a waterfall near Select Mountains, a giant bat-like creature suddenly erupted from the mountains and flew over his head. In 1927, Dr. Bartels was camping near a river in western Kava and was awoken by the sound of something very large flying over his thatched hut. The creature was calling out "Ahul" as it flew. Ernest grabbed a torch and tried to follow the sound, but it steadily grew farther and farther away. These creatures are said to stalk its prey, staying out of sight in the treetops. It will hunt for several minutes before finally dropping down on its meal and completely trapping them in its massive wings. It then delivers a bite to the neck strong enough to break the spine, killing its target quickly. Strangely, it gets its name from the sound it makes while flying, which is similar to a long drawn-out ahoo sound. There are claims that this creature can grow to be much larger than previously mentioned, such as being 10 feet tall and having a 28-foot wingspan, but most all other sightings disagree with this. Shadow creature. As mentioned in the beginning of this video, the following report is truly mind-blowing, if not terror-inducing. It perfectly encompasses the fear of what lurks around you when you're alone in the dark. However, true to my fashion, I wanted to let you know that this sighting is fueling quite a debate as to whether it is authentic or not. I'll get to that after the story. According to reports, in 1944 there was a mining disaster in the small town of Dixonville, PA, which, coincidentally, is about 45 minutes from my house. This mine suffered a cave-in which resulted in the deaths of 15 workers. Supposedly in a mining inspector's report by Glenn E. Barger, everything wasn't as cut as dry as it may have appeared. In his statement, when the lost workers were recovered, their bodies had been mutilated in a way to indicate that something had been feasting on them. According to the report, Glenn and another inspector by the name of Ted Walters made their way into the mine in order to figure out what had happened. As the two men crawled deep into the dark passageways of the mine, they came across the corpse of the first dead miner. Glenn noted that the way that the body had been ravaged, it was quite obvious that the man hadn't been killed by a cave-in, but rather had been attacked by some unseen creature. Further down the path they found the bodies of the rest of the workers, all with the same injuries as the first body. While investigating, the two men fell victim to a sudden cave-in, which caused them to be stuck in the dark until a rescue crew could find them. In his report, he stated that they decided to take a nap while waiting to be found, but it suddenly became apparent that they weren't alone. Glenn claims that he awoke to find a being standing over top of him, all the while he could feel its hot breath on his face. He opened his eyes slowly as he was afraid to see what this thing was. Not much description was given other than it looked like something not from this world. As the two men prepared for the worst, the creature suddenly ran off, and only moments later a rescue crew broke through the collapsed dirt and rescued them. It appeared that the creature had been inadvertently scared off by them. Mr. Barger theorized that the creature itself had caused the cave-in with the sole purpose of feasting on its newly trapped prey. It is said that this report had been hidden from the public and was only recently revealed by Glenn's son, Frank. Here's where the confusion comes in. Many people have looked into this story to find more facts about it, but all come up empty-handed. In fact, an odd source, a preacher named Pastor Swope, who runs a blog called Paranormal Pastor, extensively hunted down the details behind this story. He contacted local papers in the area and even talked to the town library. All of his searching came up with nothing. There were no reports of a mine cave-in in 1944. The men named were never heard of, and even the reporter who first broke the story had no record. This led Pastor Swope to decide that the story was an internet hoax. I don't deny his research and feel that he is probably correct in his assumption. However, it is worth noting that many have stated that this report had been kept under wraps away from the public for years, not to mention that others claim the location he was given was wrong. I could see how something like this could be covered up, especially since the impact of a story about miners coming across the creature that wants to kill them would have on the coal industry in the area. Up until a few years ago, coal mining was a huge business in my area, and I could only imagine how hard it would be to find people to go down into mines if they knew something might be stalking them. So at this point, I am unsure if it is real or not, but it is quite a fantastic story. Minhokau. I am adding this cryptid to the end of our list due to it being more of a technicality. While it doesn't live in a rocky cavern per se, it does live predominantly underground, and I found its backstory very interesting, albeit somewhat familiar, as you will soon see. When many people think of cryptid worm-like beings, the first creature brought forth is normally the Mongolia deathworm that is said to traverse under the sands of the Gobi Desert. While it is a fearsome creature with electrical and poisonous abilities, it isn't the worst one of its kind to exist. In Brazil, there are old reports of a worm-like being known as the Minho cow, which roughly translates to big earthworm. With that title, it doesn't disappoint, as many claim it can range in length from 75 feet up to an immense 150 feet in length. It is said to have black skin covered in armored plates, tiny eyes, two horn-like protrusions from the top of its head, and rows of sharp teeth. Unlike their namesake, these giant earthworms do not feed on vegetation, but are purely carnivorous. While this seems like a fanciful myth, there were reported sightings in the 1800s, but all sightings ceased after the 1900s. Many of the reports of the time claimed that the creature left huge tunnels underground in their wake. These tunnels were said to have caused many a house to be swallowed up by them, as well as animals such as dogs, cats, and even cows to vanish within the massive caverns. If that wasn't scary enough, apparently witnesses claimed to see the creature burst out of the rivers to eat nearby grazing cattle. Many of these reports were found in prestigious books such as the American Journal of Science. What makes this creature even more fantastic is that there were claims that in 1849, the carcass of a dead Minho cow was found near Arepe, Uruguay, stuck on some rocks. According to descriptions, the skin had tree bark-like scales, much like an armadillo, and was legless. According to tales from a German zoologist by the name of Fritz Müller, who frequently wrote of the creature in a German publication named Zoologist Garten, he made several visits to locations with recent sightings. In one such case, he never found the creature, but did note the formation of many extremely large trenches that appeared to have been created by a serpentine being. As time wore on, people reported seeing the worm less and less until it finally was almost forgotten about. Many people assume that if it did exist, that it simply died out. However, I can't help but wonder if all the outbreaks of massive sinkholes around the world might have a scarier culprit, as it could still be lurking under our feet to this day. I will mention that what really fascinated me with this cryptid was the thought that it seemed eerily familiar to the creatures found in a 1990 film called Tremors. In reading the reports, including of finding a dead one, I couldn't help but wonder if the writers of that movie used this supposed real-life event as inspiration behind their film. So at the end of our video, I'm curious to find out which, if any, of the stories frightened you the most. I know the mine one was a little disturbing for me, especially since it is apparently really close to my house. Before I end this video, I did want to mention that about 6 months ago, a subscriber of mine briefly mentioned that in December, it was her birthday. I am unsure as to the exact date, but I made a note of this just for the purpose to allow me to say, Happy 60th birthday, Tammy FAV. If you haven't yet done so, please consider subscribing to my channel for content like this, and also I'd greatly appreciate it if you could share my videos with someone you know who may be interested in this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later!